All right, guys. That is my intro theme. I call it Into the Gayness. It's quite fitting, if you ask me. But let's go ahead and get into the content here. So, this is what I call the simple secret to happiness. I know it sounds fucking like cliche, all that shit, but okay. Happiness. Most people tend to think of moments of joy or elation. This is not happiness. Happiness is more long term. We also tend to view it as we tend to see that or view that the opposite of happiness is sadness. Wrong. The opposite of happiness is boredom. Happiness is peace of mind. More specifically, a mind that is focused and not wandering. I'm well aware that it doesn't really line up with how you perceive things, but I promise you, if you reframe this, it can change everything. Well, not only because it works utility wise, but because it's factually true. The science backs it. So, continuing, we've conditioned ourselves to confuse temporary dopamine bursts due to achieved goals and fulfilled desires of objects as happiness. But the literature doesn't support this. It makes sense because these are temporary moments and aren't sustainable chemically. It will only lead to dopaminergic tolerance. This is why there are so many millionaires that are angry and seemingly miserable. There is a correlation between wealth, stuff, and happiness, but there's a massive drop off once basic necessities and comfort is achieved. Many think it's more money, more happiness. This will lead to a hamster wheel of constant comparison and discontent. You worry about losing what you have. You compare yourself to someone wealthier, and there's always someone wealthier, unless you're Elon Musk. And even he just constantly pushes for more and more power and success. He's not happy. You can see it. It's clear. I'm well aware this sounds like some meditate and find the key to happiness, overly simple hippie type shit, but bear with me. You have nothing to lose by trying and potentially everything to gain. I'm not selling you a book or some 12-step program for the low price of 3 installments of $29.99. I'm trying to share with you something that is true of all people to help you not waste your life. Why all people? Because the way serotonin and dopamine operate isn't some incredibly subjective thing that changes drastically from person to person. We understand much of how it works. As the literature suggests, boredom is one of the worst things we can imagine. All participants in one particular study said they'd pay money to not be shocked by electricity. Yet when confronted with nothing but their own thoughts for just 15 minutes, 67% of men and 25% of women chose to shock themselves rather than be bored. It makes sense when you reframe happiness to what I've described. When you're bored, your brain is constantly sifting through memories, thoughts, anything to occupy it. It isn't focused, and this is unbelievably uncomfortable. Meditation and prayer, and it's worth noting that I believe prayer is just meditation. That's really all it is, but that's my personal opinion because I don't think that there is any sort of supernatural deities out there. But we'll leave that for now. We'll just call it meditation for the time being. It's a pretty good indicator of how the single focused mind can bring about happiness. It's more difficult for some than others, but if you experience the phenomenon of just feeling your body sensations, your breath, or even words from a guided meditation video, you'll understand what I mean. The science behind the benefits are also massive and affect your longevity, your psychological state, and even your physical health. Some of our worst moments tend to be when our brain is not focused. One of the more obvious examples is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological state of discomfort that occurs when a person's beliefs, values, or actions are in conflict. This leads to the type of thought that is the most dangerous to our long-term happiness: lingering thoughts. I don't mean short-term stuff that gets stuck in your head, like whether that hot dude or chick liked you when they smiled at you. I mean long-term thoughts that persist over time, like if you wanted to be a lawyer since you were a kid and never pursued it. You have two options with these. One, come to a logical conclusion that you don't really want it. And this is tricky because you can't lie to yourself. It won't work. Either you sincerely come to the conclusion that you don't want it, or that it's not as important as you thought it was, or you're going to have to move on to two, which is you have to do it, or at least try to do it. Otherwise, that thought will never give you peace of mind. Aside from that, to me that's really the one big thing. The one big, like, those type of lingering thoughts are the one type of thought that constantly like gets in the way. So they have to be dealt with. Just about anything else you can learn to kind of push away, and well, push is a bad word because you're not actively fighting. It's the wrong way to look at it. You're just kind of being. But anyhow, I'll continue. Meditation isn't just sitting cross-legged with your eyes closed either. It's a state of consciousness. You can enter this state of awareness even while engaged in everyday activities, although it takes a bit more effort for most. It's also not all or nothing. Making even the tiniest effort toward meditation will lead you toward this single focused mind state, so long as your expectations aren't too high and you don't beat yourself up for not becoming a guru in half an hour. Another piece of evidence that we have is the state of flow. It's a state many would describe as effortless perfection. Many athletes call it the zone. It's essentially just being completely and totally engrossed in whatever it is you're doing. The better you get at not wandering into the past or future or allowing your mind to stray all over the place, the more likely you'll be to achieve this state. For me personally, there's nothing that feels quite as good as being in the state of flow. It's addictive. In fact, I spent way too much time trying to like set up personal like social experiments, or not really social experiments, just experiments, to try to achieve the state of flow at will. And it's a mistake. You can't force it. It's so weird. Like, normally if you want something, you like use willpower to try to make it happen. Or at least that's my go-to. I shouldn't speak for everyone. It doesn't work when it comes to flow. You have like the single focused mind as I described, but it just kind of happens. And it's like being on a drug almost. Like, you're like, if you're working, like doing something physical, you're like kicking ass, so to speak, with like almost no effort, and you're not burning energy. It's almost like you get energy from it. Anyhow, enough about me. I know it sounds way too simple, but happiness is essentially as simple as a mind that is focused only in one direction. But it's important to note that simplicity does not mean easiness. There are all sorts of fucking self-help gurus, like fucking I want to say Tony something. He's like a con artist, but anyway, I can't think of his name. But these people like usually try to sell you something, or they try to give you like this huge package of shit, like because it's so complicated they can't just give it to you. But the truth of the matter is, it really is that simple, at least according to the research, according to what we have figured out. And it's not perfect, like absolute science. I'm sure we have much more to learn. But based on what we have found out, it really is that simple. And we are conditioned to, I think a lot of it has to do with just being consumers. We we want this new car, new stereo, new whatever it is, clothing if you're a fashionista. And we prop it up in our mind, and the reason why we do this is because of what I already said, the dopaminergic burst that happens because we consider it a goal. We achieve that goal and we get this sense of elation. And it confuses us because it's so similar to the state of happiness, which is not the same thing. That is a temporary burst that only it's a fleeting moment. It is not happiness, and it's not sustainable, as I said. If you, for example, you're a fashionista and you get like new clothing, you can get like addicted to that, and you will constantly buy new clothing, this new cool look, whatever, and you're just going to burn all your money up. And you will it's like a drug. You will constantly need more and more just to get that feeling that you got early on in the process. It just doesn't work. And this is something that's very hard for many people to get through their brain because it just seems counterintuitive, and at least in the world we live in. But like, it's not like psychologists are like making money by telling people that stuff don't make them happy. There's nothing to gain. It's just simply true. That's what the research indicates. So, yeah. Hopefully this is helpful to some of you. And if not, at the very least, you got to experience my intro and my exit. Thank you for your time.